If you were stranded in the wilderness tonight with no food, and by day 3 your stomach is literally digesting itself, would you look over at your friend and think, man, he looks like a solid source of protein? Before you get defensive, type an angry comment and say, absolutely not. You need to realize something uncomfortable. Buried deep inside your genetic code is a dark, prehistoric survival mechanism, an evolutionary panic button called cannibalism. Today, we are moving past the watered-down history textbooks. We are looking at the raw data, the gruesome archaeological crime scenes, and a terrifying neurological disease that forced our species to evolve. By the end of this video, you will realize that you aren't just watching history. You are looking at the reason you are alive today. Let's rewind the clock roughly 40,000 years to a cave called Goyet in modern-day Belgium. A few years ago, a team of international archaeologists rolled up to this site, super excited. They expected to find epic stone axes, remnants of ancient fires, or cool cave paintings of mammoths. Instead, they hit a gold mine of scattered Neanderthal bones. Now, finding bones in a cave isn't shocking. Prehistoric people died all the time. But when these bones were packed up, sent to a lab, and placed under a high-powered microscope, the scientists' smiles instantly froze. On the thigh bones, the skulls, and the jaw bones, there were these perfectly clean, deliberate cut marks. It didn't look like the random gnawing of a wolf or a bear. It looked identical to how a high-end butcher in Texas carves up a brisket. The meat had been systematically sliced off the bone. Even crazier, some of the thickest long bones were violently snapped right down the middle. Why? Because whoever did this wanted to suck out the rich, fatty, calorie-dense bone marrow inside. But here is the absolute kicker. The people who did the butchering were also Neanderthals. And Goyet isn't a one-off anomaly. Across Europe and Asia, from the Atapuerca Mountains in Spain to caves in Croatia, archaeologists keep digging up the exact same thing. Prehistoric human remains treated exactly like game animals. This leaves the scientific community with a massive, highly debated question that splits anthropologists down the middle. Did our ancestors eat each other out of a twisted sense of sacred ritual and love? Or were they just starving to death in the dark? Let's look at the first theory, which uses a fancy anthropological term, endocannibalism. This school of thought argues that eating human meat didn't come from a place of malice, violence, or psychopathy. In fact, it was the ultimate act of love, respect, and mourning for the dead. To understand this, you have to completely delete your modern 2026 American brain. You have to step into a world where there are no churches, no cemeteries, and no concept of a formal funeral. Picture this: your tribal elder, a legendary figure who taught you how to track bison and survive the freezing winters, dies of old age. In their world, leaving a loved one's body to rot in the dirt, where worms will eat them and hyenas will dig them up, feels like the ultimate betrayal. It feels disrespectful. So the tribe throws a funerary ceremony. They believe that by consuming a small part of the deceased's body, their spirit, their courage, and their accumulated wisdom wouldn't vanish into the void. It would literally fuse into the flesh and blood of the living. The chief would keep walking through your legs, hunting through your arms, and seeing the world through your eyes. By modern standards, that sounds like the plot of a psychological horror movie. But to them, it was a beautiful tribute. In fact, in cultures that practiced this, refusing to partake in the meal was considered a massive insult, the equivalent of spitting on someone's grave. Think about how we handle death in modern America. We cremate our loved ones and put their ashes in a ceramic urn on the mantelpiece, or we bury them in a multi-thousand-dollar box. Prehistoric humans were just a bit more hands-on. They stored their loved ones directly in their digestive tract. Talk about a memory that stays with you, at least until the next morning. But while the spiritualist theory makes for a poetic Netflix documentary, the brutal realists in the scientific community are standing by with a bucket of ice water. The realists ask a very simple, pragmatic question. If eating these humans was a holy, sacred ritual, why were their butchered bones tossed into the dirt like garbage, mixed in with the literal leftovers of wild horses, reindeer, and garbage? The unvarnished truth comes down to two brutal factors. The Ice Age and the calories. Living 40,000 years ago was not a peaceful, eco-friendly camping trip. It was a hellscape. During the peak of the Ice Age, catastrophic mega-blizzards would roll in and lock down the continent for months, sometimes years. The giant herds of mammoths and bison would migrate thousands of miles away to escape the freeze. The plants died. The berries froze. Imagine sitting in a pitch-black cave. The temperature is minus 20 degrees, and your children haven't eaten in 10 days. Your stomach is literally eating its own lining. When a human brain enters a state of absolute prolonged starvation, something terrifying happens. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, morality, social etiquette, and laws, completely shuts down. The amygdala and the primitive hindbrain take the wheel. The human switch flips off, and the apex predator switch flips on. An English scientist named James Cole actually published a study where he calculated the exact nutritional value of a human being. He wanted to know if we were actually a good food source. The results were fascinating. A single adult male provides roughly 144,000 calories. Sounds like a lot, right? But here's the catch. Compared to a mammoth, which gives a tribe 3.6 million calories, or a woolly rhino, which gives 1.2 million, a human being is a terrible, low-yield snack. Plus, humans are smart, they carry weapons, they have friends, and they fight back. Hunting a human is a high-risk, low-reward gamble. Therefore, science tells us that prehistoric humans never walked around looking for human meat on a casual Tuesday. They weren't hunting each other for fun. Cannibalism was the absolute last resort. It was the panic button pressed when they had already chewed through their leather shoes, eaten the bark off frozen trees, and watched their camp dogs die. It was a choice between eating the guy who died yesterday or letting the entire family line end right there in the snow. But nature didn't let humans get away with this easily. There is a terrifying biological reason why cannibalism is incredibly rare across the animal kingdom, and it involves a monster called a prion. Prions aren't bacteria. They aren't viruses. They are mutated, misfolded proteins that act like zombies inside your body. If you eat the brain or nervous tissue of someone infected with prions, those proteins travel to your brain and start a chain reaction, turning your brain tissue into a literal sponge full of holes. In modern history, we saw this in the 1950s with the Fore people of Papua New Guinea. They practiced ritual endocannibalism, and it sparked an epidemic of a disease called kuru. Victims would lose control of their limbs, suffer uncontrollable laughing fits, and die within months. It was essentially the Stone Age version of mad cow disease. Now here is where the evolution story gets absolutely mind-blowing. Geneticists recently mapped the global human genome and found something shocking. A massive percentage of the modern human population carries a specific genetic mutation on the PRNP gene. Do you know what that mutation does? It makes you immune to prion diseases like kuru. Let that sink in for a second. The only way a species evolves a genetic immunity to a disease caused exclusively by eating human brains is if that species ate a lot of human brains over hundreds of thousands of years. The very fact that you are sitting here today, watching this video, healthy, with a properly functioning brain, means your direct ancestors successfully survived the prehistoric cannibalism epidemics. You are the descendant of the survivors who ate, adapted, and conquered. It is easy for us to sit in our air-conditioned American homes, scrolling through TikTok, eating Uber Eats, and look down on prehistoric humans as savages. But the truth is that survival instinct is never truly gone. It's just covered by a very thin, very fragile layer of modern societal luxury. When the stakes are high enough, the caveman reawakens. We saw it in 1846 with the Donner Party right here in America, when pioneers got trapped in the snows of the Sierra Nevada and had to eat the dead to survive. We saw it in 1972 during the Andes flight disaster, when a Uruguayan rugby team survived for 72 days on a frozen mountain peak by making the agonizing collective decision to consume their deceased friends. None of those people were monsters. They were just humans placed back into the prehistoric crucible. So, let's circle back to our original question. Was prehistoric cannibalism a holy ritual, Or was it pure starvation? The answer is, it was both. We are a deeply strange, complex species. We are capable of the highest forms of spiritual love and the lowest depths of primal savagery. And the only thing separating the two is about 3 days without a meal. Next time you order a pizza and the delivery guy is 45 minutes late, and you look at your roommate and say, "Dude, I am so hungry I could literally eat you right now," just check your tone. Your DNA remembers. And somewhere out there, your prehistoric ancestors are looking down, smiling, and thinking, "That's my boy. We used to do that all the time." Thanks for hanging out with me through this dark slice of human history. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments. If you were stuck on a frozen mountain, who is the first person in your friend group you're sacrificing? Take care of yourselves, stay well fed, and see you in the next one.